All right, hey, how you doing? We're back. It's I've got questions. Man, man, man. What a day, right? I'm sure many of you have heard about the terrible news going on around this country. Lots of things to talk about today. Lots of things to have questions about. But I'll tell you about a little freak story that happened with me and my dog the other day, whose name is Bronx. He's looking right at me right now. So I was going to go outside, and I came back in the house, and this dog jumps up on top of me, and he's giving me a hug, showing me some love. And as he slides down my leg, because he's 80 pounds now, he actually cut me on my leg. Now, when I tell you that a murder scene it looked like, I can't even describe it in words. There'll be a video on one of my social media pages because not only was the blood spewing out of me, not just coming out, it was spewing out like a faucet. Um, it was just a lot. It was just a lot that went on in the moment of it. But I'm here. I survived, and luckily I have a lot of medical equipment. I keep medical equipment in the house. Very good to go and get people just because of whatever's going on in this country right now. We have a whole bunch of laws overturning, gun laws overturning in multiple states. So I implore you to go ahead and get some medical supplies because you never know who you might have to help, if you, even is yourself or somebody else. But one of the number one things to talk about this morning is, or this day, I should say, the Supreme Court has overturned Roe versus Wade, allows bans on abortions. This is breaking everywhere around the country. Everyone's going to be freaking out, going crazy, or celebrating in some weird, stupid way. It's so weird to see women on any side. The stupid thing that we talk about sides, as if we're not one race, the human race. But you know, you know who did that. But the thing of the matter is, when you talk about women supporting this, or supporting just an overall ban on abortions, not even like a case by case basis or just an overall ban. I mean, you're talking, you know, abortions that, someone was raped, someone was forced upon, and they're going to be forced to have a baby that they never wanted. You say that about the men. I mean, men in this conversation is just really deplorable, and what we've allowed men to do to women by and I guess injecting this into the Bible in some kind of force, some kind of fashion where they're using religion to tell the current world what needs to happen. And many of these people are just breaking laws and doing scandalous things and being horrible people anyway. You know, um, and now you have this.
Word of a decision in one of the cases before the Supreme Court in decades. The justices have reached a final ruling on the Mississippi abortion law that prohibits nearly all abortions after 15 weeks and directly challenges Roe v. Wade. Let's go right to NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams. Pete?
Lester, in this historic decision, the Supreme Court has now overturned Roe v. Wade, and the follow-on case called Casey, in which the abortion right was made nationwide. Those two rulings stood for the proposition that states could not ban abortion before the age of viability. They could restrict it during that period up to about 23 weeks, but they couldn't ban it. Now the Supreme Court has taken that guarantee away. Lester, this is the first time the Supreme took it away, a popular right that was widely recognized. So the immediate effect of this will be to uphold a Mississippi law that would ban abortion after 15 weeks. But this also now means that in roughly half the country, abortion is, as of now, or soon will be, illegal.
That is, that's insane. I mean, I don't even understand. I mean, I understand why. They say that, Republicans and whatnot, they work very hard to make sure abortions and things are gone, not because, well, there's two sides to this, right, that I've heard from many different people, right? So one side is that because simply, racism or classism or elitism or whatever you want to say, in order to keep the white race as the rule, they're saying that a lot of these people have come together to say that having abortions and whatnot is making the white race decline, which I can see. That's probably true. But then there goes that whole debate about being the ultimate race, and that's something that has never been fixed, or there's not a ban on that. If you think about, there's a ban on abortions, but not a ban on racism. The thing is, it's just like you can think that way and think that if you ban abortions, that there's going to be a whole bunch of white babies that come, but you know every race has abortions. It's not just black, Hispanic, or Asian at all. Every race, there are people having abortions, and there are people, or women, I should say, or people, right? It's such a tough decision, and a lot of it is based on family values, morals, and religion. More than it's based on how will we protect the child when the child comes, right? It doesn't seem to be any thought behind that. You're banning abortions, but even right now, there's a shortage on formula, right? So you make people have babies, and there's nothing for the baby to eat. You make people have babies, and there's no real education for them. You have them be born in food deserts where there's not clean food, and food that isn't just to make you overweight or cancerous in the end. Um, you make people have babies in places that are dangerous, and just keep a cycle of abuse going because that's what you want. You know, you want to keep people, and this is the other side of the coin where people say, outside of making more white children, they say they want to make sure, that black children are being born, but, to keep people in a system that doesn't allow people to grow. You talk about welfare and things of that nature. Everyone's on welfare. There's a lot of people on welfare, not just black. Actually, more white people are on welfare than there are black people, more than anything. Right. And that's my dog having a nightmare. um, that was weird. But you just have to think about what really is going on and who they're targeting. I think that, even if you see with the voting rights and things of that nature, how they're trying to target certain areas to not vote, maybe it is right that, or maybe it is a correct thought that they're just trying to, have more white children or something. I don't know. I don't know why there is this push to get rid of abortion rights, and why why maybe, I guess it's allowed that. I mean, the Supreme Court has really let us down. Or who let us down, really? Because if you think about it, these Republicans played a really house of cards kind of game where they were able to get more than half of the justices to be Republican moral or centered. You look at Clarence Thomas. I mean, I just feel bad that there are so many women out there who go through this, or who have been through, or have had the thought of having an abortion, and now we're pretty much back in the 60s, where women are going to have to go and find alternate ways to have abortions. I mean, there were people getting wire hangers shoved up them to kill the fetus of a baby that they didn't want. I mean, you think about how women are out there getting enhancement surgeries, in backdoor alleys and backdoor hotels and motels now. And now you just open a whole door to. And that was the thing too back in the day about how, mostly black women were being used as objects, and they were operating on these women and doing things to them in ways where, they weren't doing it to other patients. And, you can look back and see about that. Because nothing I ever say is just something off the cuff, Black women back in the days when they were having abortions were really, sometimes they were given hysterectomies where, they couldn't even have children anymore. So many different things were happening, and now, fast forward, we're back again. Round two.
13 states have what are called trigger laws that were intended to make abortion illegal in those states once the Supreme Court reached this decision. In a few of those states, the law takes effect immediately. In some, they have to wait for the state attorney general to certify that this is what the Supreme Court has done. That's 13 states in which abortion will shortly be illegal. And in the rest of the, up to about half the states, they are expected soon to make it illegal. So we're about to become a divided country, Lester, where abortion is legal in about half the states, illegal in half the states. This is a 6-3 decision. It's written by Samuel Alito. We haven't had a chance to track it yet, but you may recall that Justice Alito was the author of the draft opinion that leaked in May that suggested that the Supreme Court was going to overturn Roe v. Wade. But Lester...
I mean, they saw this coming, but there was nothing they could do. These Supreme Court justices, the way that the Republicans got them on, it was masterful. The way that the Democrats allowed this to happen, it's their fault. It's their fault. And we need to blame them for that. I mean, we don't, I don't even know what they can do at this point, but it would. I guess it would take another vote just like this one to overturn this. But we're back again to a world and a life where women's bodies are at the behest of men, or at the behest of women who support this. Many of who don't even follow what the religion says about how to live purely, but this is what, I mean, it's always hate that they use religion with. It's always hate. Sexuality, they use it with religion. Hate. You never hear religion like being used to do good. You never hear like a Christian story about like, you know, how Christian initiatives really push to have free internet for the entire state, where no one who's poor or who can't get to the internet can have internet. You never hear that. But when it comes down to taking something away, to making a certain type or a certain group of people feel down or to not care about it, it's they always bring religion right there. It's like a nuclear bomb. And look how we're looked at around the world. I mean, we're laughed at around the world for how we treat our people, and we keep saying that we're the United States, we're, you know, land of the free. We keep showing the world how terrible we can be to our own people. We have 25% of the prison population in America, and America is only 12% of the world. We're taking away the rights of women around the country. Unarmed black people going killed by police on a daily basis. Harassment. And then the gun laws are changing. We'll get to that in a moment, but it just keeps getting better, huh? And then they want you to go outside.
Bring you some breaking news now from the United States, and the United States Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade. That is the landmark court ruling from 1973 that legalized abortion nationwide. These are the scenes outside the U.S. Supreme Court. It's important to say that this judgment had been leaked in draft form in May, and this is now confirmed by the Reuters news agency that the US Supreme Court has overturned that landmark ruling. Now, what this does not mean is that abortion becomes immediately illegal nationwide.
Not yet.
It does not mean that.
But we already heard most of this. I just wanted to hear what the rest of the world was kind of saying about us.
Across the United States, they have, in anticipation of this ruling, already passed what are known as trigger laws. It will now be virtually impossible to get an abortion in those states. So what's very interesting now is, for example, in the 50 years since Roe versus Wade, there have been many medical developments, and there are now abortion pills which are available to women. Will those states that have already moved in anticipation of Roe versus Wade to make it virtually impossible to get an abortion, now the court has ruled this way, will those states also move to say that you cannot receive an abortion pill from out of state? Those campaigners for a woman's right to choose say that this decision is overwhelmingly going to impact poorer women in America, minority women, women who cannot afford to, in some cases now, drive 1,000 miles to a state where you're going to be able to get an abortion. If you think of the political map of the United States, it pretty much mirrors the way that this decision is going to be played out. So in the liberal northeastern states, in California, abortion access will be guaranteed, but in the more conservative south and parts of the Midwest, it's going to be impossible to get an abortion, very difficult.
I mean, this is where we are, and you think about women who really, you know, cannot have another child, and you just say, well, why are you having children? Why don't you just close your legs? Or, you know, things happen. Things happen. And I've been around people who've had abortions. I've had to go to an abortion clinic because you can't drive home after that. You shouldn't. And the feeling that they have, it's horrible. And to not be there mentally for a woman who does that and really doesn't want to and does it, you know, they have to live with that. And they have to live under the scrutiny of people who don't know them, judging them and telling them, why did you do that? You murdered that baby. Meanwhile, when that baby comes out, no help from those same people. You want people to have kids every day, all day long. You want these kids popping out. But when it comes to actually being a community and being there for these children, look at all these kids in foster system, in the adoption system. Why does anyone take these kids in, have them be a part of their family? If you care so much about the kids, if you care so much about these babies, why are there so many kids in foster homes or in the system? It just keeps getting worse, and I just don't even know. It's going to be so many women out there who are going around doing these kind of abortions and trying to find out, where they can get an abortion pill, and like they said, driving thousands of miles to get it because, if they ship it to you, they could be arrested, like in Texas, where you could be arrested for driving a woman to an abortion clinic. You can, as a Uber driver, you could be arrested. You could be sued for $10,000 or more.
A tragic error by the Supreme Court, in my view. The court has done what it has never done before, expressly take away a constitutional right that is so fundamental to so many Americans that had already been recognized. The court's decision to do so will have real and immediate consequences. State laws banning abortion automatically taking effect today, jeopardizing the health of millions of women, some without exception. So extreme that women can be punished for protecting their health.
And when we talk about that too, many people don't even, they just put a blanket on abortions, but there are women who get pregnant, don't even know they're pregnant, and they're not supposed to have kids because it'll kill them. But this is now something that, if they have an abortion, or they can't have an abortion, so they die. You talk about saving lives, but then you allow lives to go at the same time? How hypocritical. What do you call it? God's will? Who made you God? Who made you be God's messenger? That's just what I was talking about. That was President Biden, Sleepy Joe, making a statement, I guess. He woke up to do that. We're going to be talking about this forever and a day. So I'm just going to go into the next thing. I do want to talk about January 6th, Insurrection. I love that, because I love to see how so many people got to get away with committing treason in this country. And, just like Donald Trump, he's the biggest one who committed the treason. I want to see what they're talking about here. He put pressure on the Justice Department, and, he broke laws, and you got people still being okay with him. It's not about America at this point. These people are about a person who wants to bring down this country. If everyone's at war, where will you live? If everyone hates each other, How will you live?
Suicide pact by a former Trump White House lawyer stood at the core of testimony in today's January 6th committee hearing. 3 former top Justice Department officials describing former President Trump's efforts to enlist help from the department to perpetuate his unsupported claims of election fraud, including pressure on the DOJ to send an official letter to Georgia election officials. That letter falsely stating the Justice Department had identified significant concerns that may have impacted the outcome of the election. When DOJ leaders refused to sign it, the president reportedly telling them just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me. Today's hearing focusing on the actions of former Assistant Attorney General Jeffrey Clark, who witnesses say stood ready to do Mr. Trump's bidding. Let's get late details from Garrett Hick.
So many people. And then the thing is that the way that they do politics, it's just a lie. Because they know that their base won't go against them at all, right? Because at the helm of it all, it's all about hate for them. There's no way that you can tell me that at this point you're not just trying to support hate. You can't say that President Trump did anything for this country. You can't say that. Why? Because Ukraine and Russia and Biden's handling of this is terrible, and gas prices are $6. That's why you're going to say that President Trump would have never had this happen? Sure, go ahead, say that. But then he was colluding with the Russians. So, of course, his buddy Putin wouldn't have done this to America at this point, right? Because he was allowing the Russians a backdoor into this country. Oh, that's your president, one term.
January 6th committee tonight laying out their case that former President Trump attempted to force the Department of Justice to help him overturn the 2020 election, pressuring senior officials to make claims of widespread fraud that did not exist.
President Trump ultimately wanted the Department of Justice to say the election was, quote, corrupt and, quote, leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman.
A quote supported by a witness's handwritten notes. Mr. Trump waived replacing the acting Attorney General Jeff Rosen with a lower-level official, an environmental lawyer named Jeff Clark, who had drafted a letter to key states, falsely claiming the DOJ had found significant fraud there.
Lies.
And when he finished discussing what he planned on doing, I said, good. Congratulations. You just admitted the first step your act you take as Attorney General would be committing a felony and violating Rule 6C. You're clearly the right candidate for this.
I mean, these are people who are really going after our voting rights, right? They're putting their hands inside of all these elections and saying that all the people who voted for Biden, they didn't, that they must have voted for Trump, that our votes don't count. These are the same people. And no one's been to jail yet. What kind of country is this that you can break the law, like this guy's saying, you can commit a felony, sitting in an office elected by people or where your boss has been elected and now you're doing his bidding. And you actively break the law, knowingly break the law. Is it because you don't care as long as in this time you're living and in 20 years you can probably get out of that prison, that comfy prison and go live somewhere and have all this money that no one ever checks for? Because when you check for the money, you see where everything comes from. You see where everything's going. Because there's no way that these people aren't taking bribes, that these people aren't doing illegal things to stand up for this man and to lie and say that an election was stolen when there's literally no evidence of it, but hearsay.
I made the point that Jeff Clark is not even competent to serve as the Attorney General. And I said, that's right, you're an environmental lawyer. How about you go back to your office and we'll call you when there's an oil spill?
Wow. Okay, well, the shade. But this is my thing. These people are allowed to be in those positions and break laws. And the person that appoints them is allowed to go to Mar-a-Lago and make deals with the Chinese and the Russians.
Clark's proposal was nuts. I mean, this guy said at a certain point, listen, the best I can tell is the only thing you know about environmental and elections challenges is they both start with E. And based on your answers tonight, I'm not even certain you know that.
DOJ leadership threatened to resign en masse.
Leadership will be gone. Jeff Clark will be left leading a graveyard.
All right. I mean, the one thing I do want to get to with this also, there was a story about Mike Pence and why he refused to get in the Secret Service car on January 6th. I want to know about that.
But first, there's a key story about January 6th that's been, to a certain degree, hiding in plain sight all this time. And we're learning more about it in ways that I think suggest something new, a newer dimension to what happened on that day. It's the story of how tensions rose between Donald Trump, president, and his vice president, Mike Pence, as Trump attempted to get Pence to do his bidding and overturn the election for him, effectively, unilaterally, and lawlessly. Now, we know the basic facts about the moment when Pence's refusal to comply and subvert the will of the voters came to a head. But the significance of that scene has taken a much darker tone as we've learned more details about it. So on the morning of January 6th, right, Trump made one last appeal to Pence at the huge rally at the Ellipse, although it sounded, frankly, more like a threat.
The public threat that he
Mike
made.
Pence, I hope you're going to stand up for the good of our Constitution and for the good of our country. And if you're not, I'm going to be very disappointed in you. I will tell you right now.
But that's not a threat. You know how many Trump people will say, he didn't say anything wrong. He just said, I'm going to be disappointed in you. Why wouldn't you call him? Why would you get on national TV in front of the entire world knowing that there are people waiting, or because they knew about this, like I said in the last show. They knew that those people were going to attack. They knew it was coming. Why would he get in front of the TV or in front of the world, put that veiled threat out there, and then an hour or two later, the entire Capitol was besieged?
We then watched as the mob, at Trump's urging, marched to the Capitol,
Right.
where they broke in and ransacked the building, assaulting police officers, roaming the halls, chanting, "Hang Mike Pence! Hang Mike Pence!" Some of them even erected a gallows with a noose outside the building. And as the danger became apparent, the Secret Service evacuated the vice president from the Senate chamber, where he was presiding over the election certification proceedings as stipulated in the Constitution and American law. Now, we know, thanks to reporting from Washington Post journalists Carol Leonnig and Philip Rucker, that Pence first went to his ceremonial office at the Capitol, where he was protected by Secret Service agents, but vulnerable because the second floor office had windows, and those windows could be breached, and intruding thugs had gained control of the building. Pence refused 2 requests from the agents in charge of his detail to evacuate the building, saying, quote, "I'm not leaving the Capitol." As Leonnig and Rucker write, the last thing the vice president wanted was the people attacking the Capitol to see his 20-car motorcade fleeing.
Right.
That would only vindicate their insurrection.
Right.
The third time the Secret Service asked, it was more of an order than a request. They moved Pence down a staircase to a secure subterranean area where his armored limousine awaited. ABC News reporter Jonathan Karl described the scene there in that subterranean chamber as he saw it.
And then you think about what he said, right? That if the 20-car motorcade would have left, it would have fueled the insurrection even more. you think about how many people actually were a part of the insurrection that were a part of his detail. Because you don't know, right? We don't, even like racist people, you never know who they are. But with these people, because we still don't know who all of them are, all 5,000 to 10,000 people who stormed our Capitol and committed treason that day, we still don't know who all of them are. We don't know who was on his detail that were a part of it. We don't know anything. I think they know, but they don't tell us. You know, they have all these, terror, what would you call it when it's I don't know, little terror, little circles around America. And we don't know who they are. And I think the issue really is there were probably people in that detail who were a part of the insurrection. Because we know that there were Congress people who toured the building with some of the insurrection people the day before. We know that certain doors were left open that day.
In official White House photos that Pence has not allowed to be published.
He was in a loading dock in an underground parking garage beneath the Capitol complex. No place to sit, no desk, no chairs, nothing. He was in this concrete parking garage, and with his family. And this is the Vice President of the United States, and he's holed up in a basement. One of them is his chief of staff, Mark Short, showing him his phone, and it's the tweet of Trump saying Mike Pence didn't have the courage.
Wow.
This is the guy who fled the rioters, and Trump is saying he didn't have the courage. And you can see it kind of looks like Pence is grimacing, but you can never really tell.
Okay, now listen to Jamie Raskin, member of the January 6th committee, who's been investigating this for 9 months, describe what happened next.
So when his Secret Service agents, including one of them who was carrying the nuclear football with him, were chased out by these neo-fascists, and they ran down to some still undisclosed mysterious place in the Capitol, he uttered what I think are the 6 most chilling words of this entire thing I've seen so far. He said, "I'm not getting in that car."
That's the moment it all came down to, after all the pressure from Trump and his allies to get Mike Pence to do their bidding and keep Donald Trump in office. The insurrectionist mob had breached the building. The Secret Service hustles Pence down into the underground parking garage. They want to take him away from the Capitol, but he refuses to go. Why does he refuse going? Well, Pence's own chief of staff, Mark Short, says the vice president did not want his evacuation to be the indelible image sent around the world.
He said, "I'm not leaving." And the reason he says he's not leaving is because he said he did not want our adversaries across the globe to see a 15-car motorcade flee in the Capitol. I think he exerted enormous leadership under enormous pressure. And I think he, again, despite efforts to have him evacuate, said, "I don't want that visual for the world to see. I'm going to stay here."
Okay, so that's what Mark Short says, right? This is an image he doesn't want to project to the world, and so I'm going to stay here for symbolic purposes, essentially. But, Pence was not the only one who did not want to leave the Capitol complex that day, despite the terror unfolding. For example, Democratic Congressman Ruben Gallego of Arizona described another immediate tactical reason for staying put.
I saw a bunch of buses pull up, and they were buses to evacuate us. And let me tell you, in coups, when you leave the Capitol, you've lost.
Right.
And so I started texting every member I could in all of our text chains, do not leave. If they tell you to leave, do not leave. You're safe for staying here. We get on those buses. There's no guarantee we're ever coming back.
I've been thinking about that sentence for a long time. You get him?
I mean, that's what I'm thinking. If he got in that car, pretty much, who knows where he could have went to? That was my thought. These crazies they're fucking crazy. They're not crazy. They still believe the South won. They believe that there's still a chance. Where could he have gone? Because we don't know. They could have kidnapped that man.
buses, there's no guarantee we're coming back. So that's Ruben Gallego's thought, right? Coup's happening, if the legislators leave, all bets are off. So occupying the physical space of the building, in Gallego's estimation, was actually key to repelling the coup.
Right.
That's very different than the PR ramifications or the symbolic image of the motorcade. That's the darker interpretation of what was going on when Mike Pence refused to leave, right? That he wasn't just concerned about how the image of the vice president fleeing would look to the world. No, he was actually also concerned about maintaining control of the government, about the American constitutional order, that his role on January 6th was to preside over the peaceful transfer of power. And if the riotous mob, propelled by Donald Trump, succeeded in driving him physically away from the Capitol where he had that duty, he may not have been able to return to finish the job of overseeing the peaceful transfer of power. That would have allowed the coup to actually take place. And that interpretation, the far darker one, the more dangerous one, the wow, we came close one, that interpretation looks more and more likely as new facts come to light, particularly about the Secret Service's role on January 6th. So on Friday, new testimony released by the committee revealed that a senior Secret Service official warned Mark Meadows of potential violence ahead of January 6th.
Like I said, they knew.
Is reporting that the committee appears to have been examining that official named Anthony Ornato. A source tells Lowell that Trump gave Ornato a big White House job, Deputy White House Chief of Staff for Operations, in part because of his loyalty.
Didn't I just say we don't know who's who? You never know. You never, ever know with them. It is evil. They are precise. They know what they're doing. How could you even trust anyone? If you're Mike Pence, how do you trust anyone to really be like, I'm going to go with you? And then hearing all that around you, all the violence and how the police were murdered that day, how this mob killed police officers. You know, the same ones who say Blue Lives Matter, how they killed police officers.
Now, Ornato previously helped coordinate Trump's infamous march through Lafayette Square for a photo op with the Bible and assisted in planning of many Trump campaign rallies. On January 6th, he was overseeing Secret Service movements. Carol Leonnig and Philip Rucker report that while Pence was in that secure underground area of the Capitol, Ornato, told Pence's national security advisor, Keith Kellogg, that the vice president's security detail was planning to move him to Joint Base Andrews. And Kellogg replied, again, this is a reporting of Leonnig and Rucker, "You can't do that, Tony. Leave him where he's at. He's got a job to do. I know you guys too well. You'll fly him to Alaska to have a chance. Don't do it." Well, I don't know. That sure sounds like it was a Trump loyalist in charge of Pence's security movements attempting to help Donald Trump effectuate his coup by...
Oh my God. I was just talking about, it's just, these people are dangerous. You're ahead of my security, but you are ahead, or you're a part of the coup. You're in charge of helping take over this country or actually steal the election. You literally are trying to steal the election. And my thing with the Trump loyalist people, right? Now, if you hear all this stuff, if you see it all come out, can you really still sit and say that the Democrats were trying to steal an election? Can you really sit on your chair, stand on your feet, roll in your wheelchair, and say that the Democrats were the ones to be afraid of on that day?
Moving the vice president from the building where he was to oversee the peaceful transfer of power. Congressman Jamie Raskin lays it out clearly.
The Secret Service agents, who presumably are reporting to Trump's Secret Service agents, were trying to spirit him off of the campus. And he said, I'm not getting in that car until we count the Electoral College votes. He knew exactly what this inside coup they had planned for was going to do. This was not a coup directed at the president. It was a coup directed by the president against the vice president and against the Congress.
And so that's why Pence's 6 words in that moment, I'm not getting in that car, were about so much more than just the image it would send to the world. It appears they were about the fundamental desire from the ex-president and his loyalists to, again, essentially in that moment, rupture the entire constitutional order in order to install Donald Trump by force against the will of the people.
Wow. Wow. You can't make that up because you know he did it. You got all these trails of evidence. You know it's there. Wow. I mean, how do you get away with that? How do you truly get away with this? All right. I mean, we're gonna take a little break really quick, and we'll be right back. All right. So we are back, and this next story, you know, is one that hits close to home, or I'm sure every person who's dealt with this can attest to it and knows how it feels. I actually read something today. Someone was talking about how people live for certain things like politics and racism, and if they don't talk about it, then they're not living. And it was, you know, sometimes you got to really look at your source, right? The type of person who's saying it. And I really had to look and be like, yeah, I see why. And why I say that is because the person was very superficial. And I feel like a lot of people who think, you know, I don't do politics, I don't get into that. It's just because you'd have to actually think about something other than the surface. And until it happens to you, you will always be on that side, because there's so many people like that who've never had to deal with any kind of real adversity. And even if they do, or live a certain way, they forget who paved the way, right? And this person was actually a gay person, and they had wrote a bunch of things about people, and I'm like, how do you as a gay person write some kind of thing like that where, you know, you don't even think about who laid down the laws for you, or who got things passed for you to be able to sit from your iPhone 13 as you are in Starbucks with your crop top on. You don't even honor the people who paved the way for that. The black people who died and protested. The LGBTQI people who, Marsha, what's her name? I'm sorry. You know, who died and, you know, were murdered and their lives taken because they were fighting for you. And I just warn people who are within the community and fight and break down the walls inside of it as well. Because there's people fighting for you out there. And even if you don't believe in Black Lives Matter and you happen to be black, when it happens to you, I don't want you coming over this side. I don't want you asking for our help. Of course, like I said in previous times, black people, we overcare, we overprotect. But you, when it happens to you, leave us alone. Get out of my neighborhood. You know, this is a teen, Florida teen. He's 16 years old, and he was accosted and humiliated and just disparaged by these over 40. They look over 50 white men. And I just feel so bad for him. Because not only did he have to deal with this, right, where these men attacked him, and I haven't heard the full story yet because I wanted to hear it on here. I mean, I know that he didn't die, luckily, because a lot of the times it's a different headline. But our black young boys face trauma like this on a daily basis, where someone tells them that they shouldn't be in their neighborhood. When I tell you and I ask why isn't racism against the law, it's because of things like this, where you are allowed to push this kind of hate on a child. And they only see him as a black man. They don't see him as a child. Look at them.
Burning out racing through my neighborhood. Burning out racing through my I'm not in your face.
According to the arrest report, one of the men hit the car with a large cone, parking cone, and a rock. They attacked this little boy's car in 2022, excuse me. Where am I? I'm back at the insurrection, sorry. They attacked this little boy. He's 16 years old. And they attacked him with a large stone and a cone because they say he was speeding in their neighborhood, the one they erected and didn't have slaves erect for free.
Thinking about what happened to Trayvon Martin.
Us living in Sanford, which is the same place where Trayvon Martin got shot, and that incident was actually like 5 to 10 minutes away from where he was killed.
Wow.
I've always, my parents have always taught me about things like this, situations like this. I learned from seeing situations like these that a phone can either save your life or they could have gotten away with what they did if I wasn't recording.
So these two men were arrested. What are your feelings about the fact that this blew up over you all being in their neighborhood? And were you speeding or something? Was that pretty much it? And if you were, that's the.
And I mean, look at what she says. She doesn't even catch herself. And this is a black woman. She's not a white woman. She's asking them how does he feel being in their neighborhood? We keep giving them that ownership. We keep letting it be known that it was their neighborhood.
Justify the response, obviously.
I was speeding a little bit, but like you said, I don't think he should have took it upon himself to do something about that. I think he should have just called the police and let them deal with that.
I was disgusted. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe this was happening to my son. It was horrifying. I can't say anything else besides it. I was terrified. And thanking God that nothing happened to my son.
Do you believe this was racially motivated or that his skin color played a part in why he was treated this way?
There's no doubt in my mind that had he been white or of another color, that this would not have happened to him. This was definitely racially motivated. They were so upset. You can see the video that they were angry. They were so upset, telling him to get out of their neighborhood. He doesn't belong there. Who are they? They don't own neighborhoods. Who are they? What do they mean? It had to be his skin color.
I say, if you ever get to the situation, you stay calm, you videotape, you turn your phone on. If something happened to you, we have evidence. To stay calm, just don't escalate it. It shows that he was more calmer than the adult.
And again, those were adults. Those were adults attacking a child, 16 years old. Why would he deserve that? Why would he deserve that type of action, that type of reaction for driving fast? You are not the law. And that is the issue, is that these type of people, these type of white people have decided that they are the law, that law and order must happen. That these are the type of people that have decided this. A matter of fact, I just want to look up something real quick. Race that just came out recently. Did it come out recently, or did they just pop it back up? I think they just popped it back up on the news. But people are talking
on the
about
heels
it now.
of President Trump using disparaging imagery to describe African nations, new tapes have just been released by the National Archives that reveal similar language used by the late President Ronald Reagan. So let me take you back to 1971. It was Reagan, who was, by the way, the governor of California at the time, was on the phone with then President Nixon. So during this conversation, Reagan referred to leaders of African nations as, quote, monkeys, and then President Nixon gets in his own dig. Here you go.
And last night, I tell you, to watch that thing on television, as I did, to see those monkeys from those African countries, and they're still uncomfortable wearing shoes.
Wow.
Well, and then the tail wags the dog there, doesn't it? Yeah, the tail wags the dog.
Wow. I mean, I think this kind of this stuff has come back into the internet, Instagram and whatnot, over the last few days. And it just goes to show you why making racism illegal or against the law is the only way to stop this. You have these are not just thoughts at this point. This is in the government, in the banking, in the healthcare system, in education. It's everywhere. You can't even drive down a street without someone saying this is their street and that you, black person, shouldn't be here on their street, in their neighborhood. Where are we? And it's getting more dangerous, right? Because now the gun laws are changing, which I've been talking about pretty much all episode. Now we have new gun laws or new orders. And this is new stuff I haven't heard. I'm going to react to it right here and now because I'm not shocked.
Gun rights. The court striking down a New York state law saying it went too far in restricting who can get a permit to carry a gun in public. But the impact goes far beyond New York. Pete Williams now on the ruling.
For the first time in American history, the Supreme Court ruled that when the Second Amendment says there's a right to keep and bear arms, that means a right to carry a handgun outside the home for self-defense. The court struck down a New York law that required showing a special need beyond a general desire for self-defense to get a permit for carrying a concealed gun in public. By a vote of 6-3, the court said no other constitutional right requires showing some special need to exercise it, and that's not how the Second Amendment works. Writing for the majority, Justice Clarence Thomas said local governments can still ban guns from sensitive places, but he said that doesn't simply mean anywhere the public congregates. And Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Brett Kavanaugh said states can still impose licensing requirements, like background and mental health checks and firearms training.
The Supreme Court today said you can't require someone to justify why they want to conceal carry a gun, but it was leaving open where the state could restrict these guns and who could have them.
The decision will have an immediate impact on New York and 5 other states with similar restrictions, but in the ruling's most far-reaching language, it said a concern for public safety isn't enough to justify new gun controls.
I mean, listen, you know I'm a two-way supporter, 150 million %. And based on the way hatred is laid across this country, how can I not protect myself? I do agree with this. I believe that every person should be allowed within mental health checks, within certain training, should be allowed to carry. Okay, If you are not an abusive person or has murdered someone with a firearm or a weapon, I don't even want to say a weapon because then that's too broad, right? I don't think you should be held back from possessing a firearm. And I think that every person who is a minority needs to really understand that. And especially African American people, we need to understand how much this means or what this means for us and where and how it can protect us. Because in so many ways, African American people or black people as a whole, I talk to a lot of older people and whatnot, they are afraid of guns. But the right thing to do is to start training, to start going to the range, to start learning about guns rather than just being afraid. Because our communities are at risk right now. They're under attack. They've been under attack. You have people coming driving 200 miles away so they can go to a Tops grocery store and kill all of us. We can't have this anymore. We have to protect ourselves. We have to protect our communities. We have to do this now. And we have to be for this. There's no reason why, unless we go completely against it, we have to be completely for it. And the only reason to go completely against it is to stop Klan members from getting all the guns. But, there's no stopping that. The largest manufacturers are mostly white. The people with the most guns are mostly white. The people who commit the most active shooter situations are mostly white. Those are real things. When you talk about gang violence and things of that nature, hey, how do those gangs get the guns? Where do the guns come from? Where does the money come from? Where do the drugs come from? We have to dig deeper. But stopping your average American from protecting his home, from protecting his castle, from protecting himself is not the way.
Justice Thomas said gun regulations must be, quote, consistent with this nation's historical tradition of firearms regulation.
I think this language is going to make it really difficult to justify gun laws going forward and will lead to courts striking down a wide variety of gun safety laws.
In dissent, the court's 3 liberals listed 9 recent mass shootings, including at the school in Uvalde, Texas, and the supermarket in Buffalo, New York. Justice Stephen Breyer said courts must consider the serious dangers and consequences of gun violence that lead states to regulate firearms.
We'll get more decisions tomorrow. 9 cases remain from this term, including the one on whether to overturn Roe v. Wade, Lester.
And Pete, what does today's ruling tell us about the makeup of the court currently?
It says that this court's supermajority is now flexing its muscles, the conservative supermajority. Remember, the court has ducked this question of guns outside the home for 14 years. This term, the conservatives had the votes to answer it the way they wanted, and we're likely to see this same 6-3 voting pattern in decisions yet to come, Lester.
Yeah, and that's the most dangerous thing that I'm concerned about with anything in this country. And with there only being one black justice, and really, let's not really, he's not for us. He's not for me, I should say. Because I'm sure there's many people who listen to the show. But I'm speaking from a black perspective, and that's all I can speak from. Right? I can only speak for myself. Clarence Thomas is not for us. Not for me. And it's getting to a point where you see the 6-3 vote, it's going to slaughter everything. They're coming for everything. And then it'd be racist if I said, look, they're white. They are. And they're coming after communities of color. All the things that they're doing, they're just allowing things to just get worse without any real threshold on things. It's getting more and more dangerous.
Right before we went on air, the Supreme Court handed down their decision that will allow New Yorkers to carry concealed firearms, striking down a centuries-old state law that made people have to prove that they had due cause to conceal and carry. Now, people are still processing all of this. The implications, we don't know really what it actually means, but, you know, given everything New York City is going through, it seems, I don't even have the words, it seems stupid. No, it's worse than that. It's worse than that. It's not even stupid. It's such a middle finger to New York. It's a middle finger to New York because, you know, we have been trying to figure out how to get a handle on all that has been going on in this city in particular with gun laws. And it makes you wonder, what does this mean? Are we saying to people, yes, you can come to the city and conceal your weapon, and now the police have to figure out who's carrying and who's not?
I mean, but that's not their job anyway. You know, I'm not gonna support that. I mean, I don't support this at all. I should be allowed to carry a firearm. Just because I'm carrying, and you know, Whoopi Goldberg is a firearm person. You know, so for her to be on her pedestal and talking like this when she probably carries every day, it's unfathomable. I mean, yeah, you could worry about what the other people are gonna do, but the thing is, I'd rather more people who are on the good side having guns than on the bad side, because that's where it is in New York. More bad people have them. And I'm not just talking about only the people. I'm talking about people who are elected.
It's legal to carry. I mean, it's insane.
Well, I will say this. It's about a 136-page decision. I'm still working my way through it. I haven't finished it. But it doesn't only apply to New York, right? It's a federal decision because it's the Supreme Court, so it will become the law of the land. You know, and it does expand the Second Amendment right as we know it, because in 2008, Scalia first wrote the opinion, and that was the Heller opinion, and it was based on the fact that you could have your gun in your home to protect the sanctity of your home and the people in your home. And I think a lot of people really agreed with that. The Supreme Court gave us the individual right to bear arms, something that people didn't necessarily read into the Constitution. Now, Clarence Thomas, writing for the supermajority, 6-3, now writes, well, you can take that right outside of your home. And if you have the need, a self-defense need, if you say, I'm carrying this for self-defense, you can carry your gun anywhere, any place, anytime. And I think why people are sort of freaking out about that, right, is because you can just say it's self-defense.
I mean, but if you think about it, we are in a self-defense time. There have been over 300 mass shootings in America since the year started. How are you not going outside in self-defense? How are you not, as an American, going outside right now, outside of self-defense? You have COVID, you have mass shootings, you have more car crashes than ever, you have the gas up. I mean, you are in self-defense at all times living in America.
Over the weekend, you said that this pending decision was keeping you up at night.
This is Mayor Eric Adams reacting to this gun ruling.
Where the court stands and how they've ruled. What's your reaction, and what is the thing that you are most concerned about?
We are still analyzing the decision, but one thing is clear: we are less safe as New Yorkers and as Americans. The Supreme Court looked at the historic role of guns and not.
We're left safe because we've allowed people to get a part of our infrastructure and be able to take it down. And I've said this before. Americans at this point need to be rebranded, rehashed, retrained. We need to start training our people. I went to an active shooter training recently, and you know, the police there, they were talking about how we all need to be protecting ourselves now. How the times we live in are the times we live in, and we need to address those concerns now. The way that you actually push this and you work together with people and make this a better transition is to have training, to implement training classes. You know, if you have such an issue with New Yorkers carrying concealed weapons, make sure everyone goes to a 1-hour training, 10 times before they can get it. Instead of just going after, no one should have it except for certain people. That's not America. If only certain people can have it, then I'm outgunned. How am I safe? I'm supposed to trust you, who did an insurrection, or I don't know if you did or not. I'm supposed to trust you, who knew COVID was going to happen and then didn't warn us and, did the wrong thing. I'm supposed to trust you, who's allowed the infrastructure to collapse and for, our gas prices to go up to $6 and blame it on Putin and call it a Putin tax hike. I'm supposed to trust you? I don't think so.
The present reality that we are facing right now, what it says in essence is that New York City, like other cities, we have a right to have individuals prove the need to have a gun. Now we are seeing that removed, where individuals could come in front of the city and we have to justify the reason of not giving them a gun. And that is going to send a chilling impact among law enforcement in our city and in our country.
Why? Because you're just nervous now that I mean, you can't be so nervous when it happens in other places, right? I've been around police officers with a gun on my hip. So what makes you so nervous? Why are you so nervous? That means you have no trust in the people. You ask me. You don't trust the people. You don't trust that the police officers are going to be able to, maybe it's going to be them who have itchy trigger fingers. Maybe that's what you're really nervous about. Because there's no reason why citizens should not be able to protect themselves or their communities. That's what the police officers are for, right? They are citizens who then became a part of a larger scope, who should execute the law better. But when they are not around, who's around? Me and you. And why should you not have a firearm? Why should I not have a firearm? Just because police won't know if I have one or not. I'm not committing a crime. I thought it was innocent until proven guilty. You're telling me I'm guilty. You're telling me I'm going to do something before I even do it. There was a movie like that, right? Tom Cruise? I don't know.
Well, Mayor, this ruling not only applies to the 8 million people in New York, but also the rest of the country. So in your view, how concerned are you about the potential increase in carrying concealed weapons and police safety?
Well, New York is unique. This is going to have a greater impact.
Concealed weapons and police safety. Sonny, the thing is that you can't play both sides. You really, really cannot. Because police are not in danger in this country. Police are not in danger in this country.
Impact on New York City because the density in our population, as you stated, 8.8 million people, millions of people use the subway system, our roads. You know what could happen if people get into a basic dispute that elevates to gunplay. Now, individuals are able to obtain a gun for just really the barriers that we had before are no longer going to exist. And as we look at this, this could cause far too many New Yorkers to carry a gun, not only for crime. Many people don't realize that almost a third of those who die from guns, it is caused by suicide as well as we deal with this mental health illness crises.
Again, there's ways to do things. Implement certain things. Implement training classes. Don't just tell people you can't have it because I don't want you to have it. That's what a bully does. Don't take people's rights away just because. This is the same thing with abortion. Don't take people's rights away. just because. The same exact thing. You can't think this way. You can't just take people's rights and put them where you want. I mean, it's a dangerous slope. But, now they can't do anything about it. There's no way something like this will get overturned. Like they said, the 6 and 3 thing is going to be for a very long time.
Guns. It's one of the most divisive issues in America today, and the stakes are incredibly high.
One of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas.
Even though I've lived in New York for 7 years, the place is pretty hostile toward guns. I actually grew up duck hunting in Arkansas and have owned a gun most of my life.
Right.
I really do understand both sides of this debate, but here's the interesting thing. We may not even have had a personal right to own a gun until 2008. This is Think Again, with me, Andrew Stern, where I take you every step of the way as I dig into compelling, complex, controversial topics that make us wonder, do we need to think again? As with basically anything that has to do with laws or rights in this country, it all comes down to language. So let's take a look at the Second Amendment.
Keyword, language. You have to always think about that. How you use your language is very, very futile, and it's very important.
A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If we set aside the moral issue and just focus on the legal question of whether or not we have a personal right to own a gun, there's really two main things that people disagree on. One, was this first part, commonly called the militia clause, designed to limit gun ownership only to people who are actively serving in the militia, which today would be the National Guard? And two, what does keep and bear arms actually mean? Or more specifically, what did it mean in 1791 when the amendment was written? Because that second question has gotten a lot more heated in the last year or so, if you can believe it, because of this weird-sounding field of research called corpus linguistics, which we'll get into in a bit. Anyway, while today we might think the Second Amendment protects our personal right to own a gun, a lot of experts would tell you that wasn't the case for most of U.S. history. For basically 200 years, the Second Amendment was commonly understood to link gun ownership to militia service. And that understanding wasn't even really challenged at the Supreme Court until the eve of World War II. In 1939...
I mean, I was looking into this video because, the Second Amendment is, and most of the amendments are very broad, right? And that's why so many things get swept under it, like racism gets swept under the First Amendment. The Second Amendment is going to be a thing that I really don't see it. I don't see it ever being struck down. I don't, about abortion, I think that could go either way. But as we get more and more into a gun state that we are in and that we're living in this country, I cannot see a place where Americans do not own guns unless they are all taken away from us. And at that point, hellfire and brimstone.
Two bank robbers in my home state of Arkansas tried to claim they had a Second Amendment right to own a sawed-off shotgun. A unanimous Supreme Court said, nice try. There's no way you can link a sawed-off shotgun to militia service. So the government can make that particular gun illegal if it wants to. So almost 150 years after the Second Amendment was ratified, this ruling kind of confirmed the common understanding of it. The government didn't have to regulate or prohibit firearm ownership, but it could if it wanted to, because the right was pretty well understood to be tied to some sort of militia service. And this interpretation held for another 50 years or so.
There was no mention of personal self-defense at all in the Constitution, in the Second Amendment. It was basically understood to mean that carrying arms in the context of some kind of military service.
So how did we go from a common understanding of the Second?
So it's another. I bet you. I can almost assume or bet who led this kind of idea. It's another way that these people have gotten around the laws in order to make it maybe another unsafe place. Maybe that's what they wanted all this time, which is just make things unsafe, right? The more people with guns, the more crime, the more this, the more that, the more you have to regulate, the more police we need, the more military stuff we need for police and militarizing the police.
An amendment that linked gun ownership to the militia, to where we are today. Because the Supreme Court case that actually changed all of this didn't even happen until 2008. But by the time we got there, most Americans already thought the right was personal, not militia-based. And for that, you can mostly thank the NRA.
Yeah.
From the late 1960s to today, the
And you know who the NRA is.
NRA went on the offensive in acts, in speeches, in TV appearances, pushing the narrative that you have a Second Amendment right to own a gun, and the government's trying to take it away from you.
Their goal is to eliminate the Second Amendment and our firearms freedoms so they can eradicate all...
This is the same thing they did with the election. Just told lies. So really the Second Amendment does not mean what it means. I'm a two-way supporter, right? That's what I've been saying that. I've been saying that, and I've said it on the show several times. But when I'm, when I'm told something, and it's really, I believe this, I'll have to really go into the Second Amendment and really read it thoroughly, right? But I believe this already. Because I see how they do it. It's the same story of how they want to push an initiative. They use something that has loopholes or loose language, and then they make it a fact without it ever being a fact.
Individual freedoms.
All right, so our timeline is all over the place by this point. We have the Constitution, a Supreme Court case in 1939, the NRA from the 60s to today, another court case in 2008. Yet somehow I can't even explain how we ended up with a personal right to own guns without going back to 2003. Because that's when these guys decided it was time to take on the militia clause and prove, once and for all, that it did not limit your personal right to own a gun.
The three of us litigated the Heller versus District of Columbia case.
The three being Clark Neely, Alan Gura, and Bob Levy. Bob is the chairman of the most influential libertarian think tank in the country. The fourth guy in that photo is Dick Heller. He was their model case. Heller was a special police officer in Washington, D.C., which meant that he carried a gun to work. But he also wanted to own a handgun at home for what he said was self-defense. But because D.C. had a law on the books that banned all handguns, he wasn't allowed to have one.
D.C. was a particular right place to litigate Second Amendment because they had the most draconian gun control regime in the country. And yet, they had the highest rate of gun violence in the country.
So, thanks to Bob and his colleagues.
And I hate when people do that highest rate of gun violence. They're talking about more than likely per person, per capita, that bullshit pretty much. DC is very small. So when you compare how many gun violence situations versus a larger state, that's what I feel like they use their quote-unquote facts on.
The Heller case winds its way to the Supreme Court.
Same thing like how they use black-on-black crime and say, black-on-black crime is at 93%. Well, white-on-white crime is at like 97%. But no one talks about that. And the fact that black people only make up 12% of the population, whereas white people make up 55% of the population, right? So when you say that black-on-black crime is a outcry and all this, it does not really compare to the crimes of other people.
And we end up with the first definitive ruling on whether or not we have a personal right to own a gun. The court started with the militia clause.
The militia clause was a prefatory clause to give one of the main reasons to recognize the right to keep and bear arms.
Stephen Holbrook wrote a hugely influential opinion for a bunch of senators and congressmen in the Heller case. He's saying that the militia clause announces one important reason for why people should be allowed to own guns, but it's not the only reason why.
It should be for when the British are coming, or anyone else.
Invariably, if you refer to the right to bear arms at the time of the founding, it refers to an individual right.
That was a pretty big departure from earlier decisions. But that's what Justice Scalia said in his 5-4 majority opinion. After Scalia addressed the militia clause, he took on disagreement number 2. What does keep and bear arms really mean?
We conclude that it means pretty much what it means today, to have and carry weapons.
Scalia got that particular part wrong. That he just blew it in terms of the meaning of bear arms.
Dennis Barron is a leader in the field of corpus linguistics, which I mentioned earlier. All it means is that scholars and researchers gather up tons of sources. I'm talking like every single piece of text written in a given time period. Then they analyze how exactly a term was used and understood.
And they're talking about bear arms.
In that time period. Now this becomes important because Scalia was an originalist. He said the court can only interpret what the Constitution literally says, and only how voters would have understood that language at the time that it was written.
We argued that bear arms always has a military context, as the historian Gary Wills said.
Well, look, we're not going back on that. I mean, this video came out on May 25th, 2022. It is now June. It's almost a month later, June 24th, 2022. And the time now is 1844. Yeah, and here we are, just a month later. Just a month later. Gun laws have changed. And there's nothing anyone's going to be able to do about this forever. This will never, ever go back. I want to, before we wrap up, I want to go into, I think, 2 more stories real quick, talking about mental health and whatnot. And I think mental health really needs to be talked about more and more, especially with these laws and these gun rulings coming down the way they are. This one is about the importance of diagnosing adult ADHD, which, yeah, I think with these gun rulings, we're going to need to figure this out. Let's check this out, see what they're talking about here.
Atlanta Plugged In starts now.
ADHD is a 24/7 disorder that first appears in childhood and can often stick around into adulthood. Joining us today to discuss ADHD in adults and how leaving it undiagnosed can affect your life is board-certified psychiatrist Teresa Cirilli. Welcome, Teresa. So, how serious are the consequences of leaving ADHD undiagnosed?
In my opinion, quite serious. In fact, I would really it's important to emphasize this is not just a problem with kids having misbehaviors or kids having trouble in school. Adults with ADHD struggle with routine, everyday tasks and time management. So, for example, one of my males with ADHD forgot to drop his son off at daycare, left him in the back seat of the car because the kid fell asleep in his car seat, was quiet, and dad drove to work and forgot to stop at daycare.
Wow.
So these are examples of where we can run into some serious problems as an adult with ADHD if left untreated.
Teresa, what treatment options are available for adults with this disorder?
I recommend, based on research, a combined multimodal approach, and that's both pharmacologic interventions and non-medication treatments as well. So ADD coaching, working with therapists, counselors, very important. And then for medications, there are stimulants and non-stimulants. But for adult ADHD, we have some good news because for the last 20 years, we had only prior to this had one option. But recently, the FDA approved a new novel non-stimulant, non-controlled substance for treating adult ADHD, and that's Qelbree. It is.
All right, and I don't want to promote anything that I don't know about. But the thing is, a lot of adults live, and especially in my community, the Black community, live with things that have never been diagnosed, that have never been really even talked about, and we go to work and we just work because that's all we've known, and we're dealing with all these issues. And I think that I hope that they really do bring more of this to light and talk more of this, especially within our community, because I think a lot of that does happen, especially within the Black community and just mental health period. You know, I think a lot of other communities, they recognize, you know, these things even in adulthood. And unfortunately for a lot of Black Americans who do suffer with mental health issues or whatever you want to call that, a lot of people around them will laugh. And, you know, I heard these guys in the gym just talking freely in an open gym, just talking freely about, oh, well, you know, nowadays people just commit suicide, you know. And the thing is, people were committing suicide back in the day. You know, there's just more pressure. There's just more pressure to do more and more and work more. And you know, you got people working 3 and 4 jobs just every day of their life, working Uber at night, working at a call center in the morning, working, you know, dog sitting or dog walking and all these things that they're doing. And then you have money issues. You have people homeless, you know, COVID, all these things, so much going on. And I think that it's more time now than ever for people to talk to people and really understand what's going on and try to help people figure out what's going on in their lives and why they tick the way they do and why they don't tick the way other people do. Before we close up the show, I think I want to talk about this because I did enjoy it. I did enjoy that this song came out. And I've talked about several entertainment things. We don't want to talk about politics here. But Beyoncé is back, and she's going to be putting out this album called Renaissance. She has this new song called Break My Soul, which I think is, a lot of people have said, an FU to the former president, who talks about stealing the election. She's talking about quitting jobs and going for your own thing, because, you know, these corporations really run you rampant. They really hold you down. They really hold you back. And these systems that we have in place of just working for the man has really stumped a lot of us. And, you know, even talking about that person earlier who I was saying, who talks about, oh, why do you care about politics? They weren't saying it to me, but they were saying it in just such a broad spectrum. And I just feel like, you know, we have to pay attention to what's going on with each other, because as you see today, 2 rulings have changed the entire country that never changed the country or hasn't changed the country in over 60 years. 60 years. So there's that.
Now to the soul behind Beyonce's brand new song of the summer, Break My Soul. Queen Bee teaming up with Big Frida. Our Ike Ajachi had to look at who she is and her one-of-a-kind sound. Hey, Ike.
Hey, good morning, Michael. Big Frida is a legend. Hailing from her native city of New Orleans, she's recognized for pioneering bounce music, known for its call and response sections, a style that's hitting mainstream once again. Beyonce's newest single, Break My Soul, could well become the song of the summer. The single, bringing Queen Bee together again with performer Big Frida, who's featured on the track.
And I just want to point out, and not that it needs to be pointed out, but this song came out the day after Juneteenth, which I thought was a great idea, that she did not release it on Juneteenth and took away from what Juneteenth is about. She released it the day after, and it speaks about releasing, you know, a lot of the anger that's in this world and releasing a lot of it to become who you need to be. And I love the fact that she included Big Frida, who is a LGBTQI person. I don't know if she identifies as trans or not, but you know, she's a part of that community, and I do love the fact that Beyonce is including her and still embracing people of the LGBTQI family, I guess you would say, because there's so much hate still going on within the Black community, you know, itself with LGBTQI people. I recently saw a preacher, a female preacher, pastor, whatever you want to call her, a demon, I would say. Really just talking about how it's against God's will. And I just never understand why any of these people never do any history work and see why God never said any of that, and how these things were revised, these books were revised to include hatred and hate. But I think it's really awesome that Beyonce decided to include Big Freedia into her song or onto her project. She didn't need to, and that's pretty awesome.
Big Freedia has been slaying the industry for over 20 years as a creator of bounce music, a genre of hip-hop originating from New Orleans, where she's from.
Honestly, anyone who's ever seen a Big Freedia live show knows that it's unforgettable. She's just a really in-demand performer, and now Beyonce is giving that beloved figure a huge platform once again.
Big Freedia sharing her joy on Twitter, writing, "It feels surreal to be on the track with the Queen Beyoncé once again. I'm so honored to be a part of this special moment. Someone please catch me."
Oh yes, just to believe it.
In addition to Beyonce, who Freedia worked with back on 2016's Formation, she has collaborated with some of the biggest names in music, like Lizzo, Drake, and Kesha.
I think that having Big Freedia part of Formation, and then 6 years later, Break My Soul, just says, hey, this person means a lot to me. Their music means a lot to a lot of people.
Yeah, I like the fact that she did use her again, or not use her, but, well, I guess it is, whatever formation you want to say about that. Because it could have been like a fad thing, right? Like, you just used me for a moment, but she literally came back to her. This is Beyonce's first album in 6 years, and she came back to Big Freedia and gave her another platform. I think it's really awesome.
Now, Big Freedia's contributions to music can also be felt within the LGBTQ plus community. After 20 years on these scenes, she says she's going to continue to grind so she can keep representing for her community.
All right, guys, this is the end of I've Got Questions. I appreciate you for listening. Please share our platform here. I think soon we'll be doing some video stuff soon. So we'll keep going. We'll keep pushing. Keep doing the good thing. Keep fighting the good fight. We are angels. We need to protect each other. We need to protect this earth. There's a lot of things going on. But until next time, peace out.